So indeed, we have entered the new age amidst the new world and its new order, a place where we are now bombarded with doublethink, also known as cognitive dissonance, as a normal way to perceive the world, generalized sociopathy. Truth and morality have suddenly become relative. What is real seems to now be subjective, or by a choice, or a meme on social media, storyline of a TV series, or news segment in the MSM. What more would you expect from the post-reality era? One where the brave new world of Aldous Huxley and 1984 of George Orwell seemed to be playing out perfectly before our eyes, simultaneously. And surely not by chance or natural social evolution, but by design. A dark and sinister scheme that originates in the garden, the one we all read about in Genesis 3. Though it takes its many forms, rolled out by its many adopted authors, age after age, generation after generation. And this is what we are seeing today, and there's no better way to see it than by revealing its presence in the media, exposing their blueprint to the control of our minds and the possession of our spirits. So let's get into it. So here at the channel, I try to address current patterns and evidence of mind control in the mainstream media. And by backing them with historical cause and effects contexts, hopefully we can all get a clear understanding of what is really going on here and why. First, and as we always make clear here, the media, since its inception, has been the prime social engineering arm of the establishing powers and global oligarchs. Let's remember, it's much, much deeper than the CIA. It's deeper than America. See, the United States is simply a petri dish, a great testing ground for the culture creation, a corporation for social capital used to construct their vision of the monostate and global citizen. Controlled and managed by a multipolar affiliation of global oligarchs that predict, persuade, and conduct entire populations via media entertainment, food and drug industries, and the education system. With the help of polarizing man-made religions, identity politics, and socialist propaganda, as well as nationalist propaganda, the world is worked over like a mound of clay, folded and shaped into a pagan's paradise and communist dream of delightful captivity and empty-headed, pleasure-driven comfort and servitude. In other words, the devil's playground. A key part to shaping society is obviously done through scripting our reality, like a movie, utilizing media to form our worldviews, and corrupting education to match it. Another key factor in this, one we will touch on momentarily, is their required need to reform our language to fit in with their social script and reality matrix. This is done through what we know as newspeak. But before we go into all of that, let's touch on some recent media programming that has to do with morality and worldview corruption. And yes, as always, identity politics. The religion of the me generation and society narcissist. So we are all familiar with the repetitive propaganda movements of sexism, racism, homophobia, and the like. But a new ism beginning to take center stage is this silly concept of ageism. Another dialectic and argument to occupy your time and mind. Another reason for you to bicker about the touted communist campaign gimmick, equality. The current establishment ploy design set to mold us all into the perfect little, zealous and compliant global citizen. Done so by rolling out identity controversies left and right, setting groups in opposition, until we agree to relinquish our ordained differences and accept a Lockean blank-slated secular identity. One they can fill in with all their propaganda and controlled perspectives. So we become acquiescent floating bags of atoms with no direction or purpose, no soul, and defined by Nietzschean nothingness and entrapped by the existentialist bubble their scientists and philosophers have designed for us. A people in need of control. Captive geographically by socialization, captive psychologically by state-indoctrinated worldviews, and captive spiritually by the regime of secularism and the cultural destruction of righteousness, faith in Christ, and the Holy Scriptures. We are witnessing this movement taking its course in real time, right now. The Fight for Equality movement is a clear indication of this formation. A Fabian gradual tactic of social takeover, subtle, slow-moving, and disguised by the appearance of justice, evolution, progression, and for the good of mankind. I know they like to say that a lot. Fighting for equality appears virtuous, and that is part of the illusion. It's part of the manipulation. Persuasive language is used to manipulate or minimize and narrow the range of our thoughts. This is also known as newspeak. We now see ageism joining the program, but there's a darker element to this ageism idea we can discover by asking, what will ageism lead to? What can we see from this young should be equal? There goes that equality NLP word usage again. But what can we gather from their young should be equal to old argument? Do we sense a direction towards age doesn't matter? Young with old is okay? Oh wait, next they will roll out the love is love rhetoric, right? Age is discrimination. Ageism will be the new hate speech, which seems to lead us directly to, of course, pedophilia. Ageism poses as a precursor, if you will, a type of soft priming with harder stuff to follow. First, they get us to fight for equality between ages in film or representation. They love to say that. Soon we will be arguing for the right for equality between ages in sexual consent. How is this so? Is this a reach? Surely not. By simply understanding the gradual nature of Fabianism, the long-suffering goals of the Frankfurt School, and the blatant usage of newspeak terminology, we can easily not only spot evidence of mind control, but also easily predict its direction logically. And this goes without even mentioning programming that has already implanted this goal in our subconsciouses decades ago. Have we forgotten about Lolita? What about Harold and Maude? All these things are old examples, and there's many other numerous examples in TV shows and movies that equate the same thing. Even politically, shall we mention NAMBLA? I mean, we've covered it before. Can you hear me now? When we utilize logic, reason, rhetoric, and understanding of fallacies, all of their programming exposes itself. For instance, they might convince us that sexual ageism is justified by consent, just as currently they are convincing us that children are capable of consent to reassign their own gender surgically. Yet, logically, we all understand children are too emotionally underdeveloped and too young to maturely keyword maturely by nature, give consent to any of these things. This is where newspeak and perspective management is exposed. Hence why they aim to dilute our logic faculties by overflowing our minds with controversy, devices, and dramatic emotion. This is why they preoccupy us with the divisive, controversial, and emotion-driven fight for equality, the unwinnable battle, and I'll explain why. Whether it's race, gender, or age, they want us to focus on the fight, not the solution, not the goal or outcome, because their goal or outcome is not realistic. Here we can never achieve the conclusion that the objective fight for total equality is illogical and utterly unsustainable. In turn, we will just pick a fight or join numerous ones and eventually ultimately agree to give up our individuality and rights of personal beliefs, culture, or worldview and adopt their worldview, their cultural hegemony, and their tarnished brand of freedom, which is slavery. The Hegelian dialectic of equality, now with the newspeak term printed and posted everywhere, inclusivity. This black and white polarity speech which boxes our perspectives in an either-or scenario. Either you are a good guy or a bad guy, a patriot or a terrorist. The Manichaean arrangement continues to be utilized to control the masses, and it works. That's why tyrants and dictators never change their methods. This coincides with groupthink and wrongthink. Inclusivity, little sister to equality, is a newspeak term that represents groupthink, the mode of thought that is preferred by the establishment. If you are not one that adopts this thinking of universal inclusivity, you are a subject of wrongthink, an ostracized social heretic and now enemy of the people, and detriment to the mental and social health of society. Similar to how questioning the status quo has now become fake news, or questioning the honesty of media or the government has become fake news or some type of terrorism, similar to a thought crime. Do you see how this works? This is Mass Thought Management 101. Gearing the masses to accept a homogeneous global or state citizenship by engineering culture with propaganda and identity politics to willingly remove or attack outliers of individual or fundamental thinking by shunning, assaulting, or persecuting those that exhibit it. This process of social engineering is precisely why we are witnessing the grand equality and inclusivity campaign being pushed currently in the media. Not to bring rights or resolution to gays, blacks, women, the overweight, the old, or the Muslim, but to ultimately weaponize these categories, divide us between them to fight their proxy civil wars, and deconstruct society as a whole, and then re-educate our worldviews to prepare us to accept their alternative order and new age. But let us put the nail in the coffin of their alleged mantra monster equality and its new-founded companion inclusivity. Oh, but how? With no other way but logic, of course. Logically, their praised total social equality and freedom for all is absolutely false. Mainly, we can address the fact that it is logically unsustainable as a presupposition to assume activism and advocacy can and will produce social equality. Simply ask, equality for who? Rights for who? Women? Blacks, gays, transgender, okay, now age, okay, Muslims, sure, okay, but what about Aborigines? What about Muslim Aborigines? They aren't equally represented. What about transgender Muslim Aborigine women? What about their rights? Why aren't we in the streets and on Twitter about this? What about blind rights? The deaf? Why aren't we discussing claustrophobic rights? Filipinos and Pacific Islanders are underrepresented in the university and academic setting. Why aren't we discussing that? Indian lives matter, right? Etc., etc., etc. How far can we go with this argument of equality? When do we stop? And if we did at some point, would not that be discrimination? No one is free until we all are free. There's always going to be an underrepresented group. Discrimination will always exist to some extent. This is logic. Total social equality is illogical. How sustainable are these positions? They aren't. Logic proves it so, and also proves it is nothing more than rhetoric and directionless propaganda. You want to talk about women's rights? Let's talk about Chinese women's rights, Nigerian women's rights, because they do differ from those of Western women. We can't just lump them into one group. This renders the amount of cases to fight endless. In short, equality at a rational level is worth achieving and worth fighting for. But the fight for total social equality is unsustainable, illogical, yet a key weapon in the culture war of the global oligarchies. Another way to see the rhetorical deception is how they disregard priority in terms of which equality to fight for. Like how they promote the discrimination of a very significant and integral group like women, yet on the same level as a extremely insignificant and useless humanity group that's less than 1% of the population, transgendered. Here we confer that no, results and priority-based solutions are not part of the goal here at all. Yet they are arguments being fomented to the masses with goals of fighting for the simple sake of fighting. And let us not forget that they promote one group that would essentially cancel out the other. Is it not a fact that homosexuality and transgenderism as influential movements directly undermine the function and purpose of the God-ordained heterosexual woman? In turn, directly destroying natural reproduction, the family, and healthy masculinity, or the heterosexual man. Here we find sex and identity being weaponized to cancel out man, woman, and child. And we are being engineered to fight for its success via MSM and entertainment. And this might, again, be preaching to the choir for some. But we must reiterate these things, especially for the new listeners. So I do apologize for repetitiveness. But this leads us into their other form of programming that plays right along with their identity politics. And that is the current magnified hypersexual programming by using a media blanket technique or blanket themes. Whether it be race, gender, or sex as a blanket theme, they put it in everything. So it covers all sources of media like a giant blanket. Sex in everything. Race in everything. Gay in everything. Blanket themes are used to desensitize an audience to sensitive or taboo subjects and induce their acceptance of them. We may discover they focus on homosexuality not only to rebel against God or destroy the woman and family, but for the simple fact that homosexuality is predominantly based in hypersexuality, promiscuity, and perversion. This group encourages the oversexed and flesh consciousness, leading to the multitude of sexually perverse practices as normal, acceptable, and of course, inclusive. Polyamory to pansexuality, next bestiality, and the currently popular sex with inanimate objects and toys, to machines, and sequentially, robots. This is where all of this heads, and we are being exposed to it in doses. Gradual Fabianist mind control. We are all undergoing a mass-scale confusion movement where identity politics and sex are being used as weapons to overwhelm our minds into submission, sensory overload. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, they always aim to sexually abuse and demoralize the children. What more obvious way than to legally allow pornography sources to educate our children on what sex is, what it means, its purpose, and what it should look like? Yes, this is no joke, guys. Mass media and your very own government is promoting porn giants in a massive psychological sexual abuse campaign aimed at our children and society as a whole, boasting an all-out attack on our moral fabric and healthy Christian ideals. Spiritual warfare of the highest power. Porn companies are now playing as public service advocates in desperate attempts to violate your worldview and moral compass. They aim to corrupt all and let no one escape their onslaught. And again, all of this psychological abuse is allowed and perfectly legal and promoted by numerous news outlets and mass media sources. How can this be? How did we come to this point? If you thought things weren't so bad or weird yet, well, welcome to the post-reality era. The world of duality, the doublethink and newspeak. Soon companies like Pornhub will be selling Christmas trees or building amusement parks and hosting and sponsoring religious festivals. Try explaining that to your kids. Oh, but wait, if you disagree with this new sexual programming, you aren't sex positive. Another addition to the newspeak lexicon. Sex positive implies that to be progressive and inclusive, you must accept all sexualized concepts. Otherwise, you're some type of bigot or ignorant, or you'll be viewed as closed-minded or judgmental, similar to the use of slut shaming, or how addressing the inherent health issues of being overweight is now called body shaming, and to accept unhealthy eating habits and being happily overweight is body positive and loving yourself. This is called newspeak, accompanied by doublethink, the law of reversal, flipping order and nature on its head. All part of this extensive confusion movement. NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, persuasive language promoted to appropriate and accept absolute nonsense and backwardness. One of the strongest examples of newspeak mind control today is the overly used "all of us" phrase. This is a groupthink technique used to induce mass confirmation of a viewpoint, behavior, or perspective, as though we are feeling the same thing as the example they are showing us, as if we all work and think from one hive mind. Or if there is a perspective they want an entire population to take, this type of newspeak assumes and imposes this perspective on the subjects, ultimately to narrow the audience's range of thought to fit within the confines of the media. Groupthink, hive mind, or herd mentality are all parallel descriptive concepts for this, and currently we are seeing these examples in the media like never before, and never so clear. Lastly, aside from the sexual assaults of mainstream media and entertainment, have you all noticed how, for the first time ever, everything has suddenly become political? Sister Jessica had mentioned this in some of the comments, and I thought it was fascinating because it was something I thought as well, and I was actually putting it in a video. It's pretty fascinating. I remember a time when a very small minority even cared about politics. Now it seems like everyone is an activist for something or advocates some type of movement. Today we see sex, identity politics, or equality politics in general has also become a blanket theme in the media. Politics in everything, a designed and controlled battle for everyone to join and fight. Whoever you are, whatever you are, surely they have provided you a political war to enlist in. This not only divides us and distracts us from the esoteric plots beneath the surface, but it ensures that we trust in their system, that we believe what they tell us, and that we rely on their system to fix things. So they make things appear to be broken until we scream and cry for their help, reinforcing their stronghold on our minds and will. If you haven't noticed, they are programming society, especially millennials, into being liberal Marxist socialists or right-wing patriotic nationalists, going head-to-head to fulfill the establishment's alchemic marriage via controlled proxy wars. See, we understand politics are soap operas for social engineering. It helps shape perspective and helps make our post-reality appear real. So it is inherent that they get us all to participate, to believe, and to accept. So they manipulate our thoughts via emotion, controversy, and carnal desires, to in turn diminish our use of logic and guarantee our allegiance to their magnum opus or great work. We are victims of mass psychology, spiritual possession, and the desensitization from advanced technology. So as a society, in general, we tend to suffer from an encompassing stretch of ADHD, and our reality needs to be scripted like a movie or TV show to keep our attention. Otherwise, we would not care about politics or anything at all for that matter. They must design our reality to ensure our perspectives and actions are properly guided and controlled. For all these things have been already written and must be fulfilled to bring forth the day of judgment and the gathering of his people. As we await this day, we stay faithful in anticipation, strong in mind and spirit, and expose the darkness as it plays out before us.